On to our second debate. We're going to bring up two of our very strong paramedic leaders within our BCHS organization. I work with both of these gentlemen and I'm proud to do so. So let me introduce Mr. Adam Green. He's a unit chief at BCHS Critical Care Transport Station here in Vancouver, 280, which is our largest base. And arguing against is Olsen. He's our critical care paramedic practice leader, whom we both are heavily involved in many projects together. Oli has had 22 years of experience in the ambulance service, and he focuses most of his time now on the critical care and trauma portfolios. Okay, Adam, take it away.
Thank you. So Oli and I did agree that this was just going to be a face-to-face, but guerrilla warfare takes it. Just ask Bob Alexander, I presented the hospital after I had a full show class. So, well, I guess I don't put this in. Perfect. All right, so some lovely pictures here of Vancouver and helicopter. We'll talk about disclosures. Obviously, once upon a time we did work together. Longest 3 years of my life. Taught me everything I knew. That took probably 4 hours. And I had taller, so that's not bad. I'm not really sure if this is a better representation of Oli or I, but it seemed fitting for this kind of debate. So, round one, truly, Norway versus Ireland. Took me a while to find this. But I figure there's no better way that we actually assess a debate and measure two countries than by looking at the World Rugby rankings. Oh, son of a gun. Let's see. Ireland's third. Took me a little while to find Norway. 95th. Jesus. The good news, you're one spot above Rwanda. Okay? I'm confident that my wife can explain the rules. She even has a little interpretive dance. So, why are we all here? We're here to talk about pre-hospital plasma. Okay? Let me figure out where I am here. I can probably sum my presentation up in one word. Yes. Yeah, we can just end this. Okay, so where are we here? So, a little bit of background. We all know that with regards to death from traumatic damage, the majority happen within the first couple of hours. Thus, the pre-hospital environment is actually a very important venue and one that we're still very much developing. So I don't need to talk in a room of highly educated physicians about damage control resuscitation and its tenets, which clearly describe rapid definitive hemorrhage control, permissive hypotension in select people, the minimized use of crystalloid, and most importantly, the timely use of balanced blood products. And I think balance is the key word here. So, some basic pathophysiology, which I'm confident we all know here. Okay, the benefits of bringing plasma becomes we increase clotting factors, we reduce vascular permeability, we protect the endothelial glycocalyx, and we decrease inflammation. All very important in the setting of trauma. Okay, what we've also learned is that the administration of high ratios of plasma to packed blood cells has widely been adopted within the hospital system for traumatic hemorrhage. That's why we're using the field. We have rudimentary systems that are, we have systems that are starting to use packed blood cells, some are starting to delve into plasma, and then a few even start to use whole blood. So why are we not continuing to use the hospital system in the pre-hospital phase, okay? And addressing what we talked about as hemostatic resuscitation, which we know if we can prevent that acute coagulopathy and trauma shock, we can decrease the mortality almost fourfold. So, some of the studies that are out there, I won't bore you to death with them, but some of the sentinel articles that talk about this subject. The PROMPT study by John Holcomb and Company, which was sort of the impetus for bowel resuscitation and 1:1:1, talking about equal ratios of plasma to red blood cells and platelets. And continue on, this was confirmed then by the proper randomized clinical trial, which also supported its use. Okay, while we found no difference in mortality after 24 or 30 days, we did clearly show a better hemostatic profile and decreased deaths from exsanguination. Suggested that that balance is actually key. Okay. And then we, of experience. It's very unfortunate that some of our best evidence in trauma comes from military experience, and thus from the last 15 years of war in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay? But when we start looking at a 10-year analysis of the transfusions from both Operation Iraqi Freedom as well as Operation Enduring Freedom and nearly 3,600 people, we saw that if we could mitigate the acute coagulopathy and trauma shock, these patients had a markedly decreased reduction in mortality. So, now we look at the current evidence, the stuff that everybody's familiar with. The PAMPER trial, okay? There's arguably nothing more complicated than the coagulation cascade than trying to do pre-hospital research. Okay? It's an incredibly challenging venue. You have logistically and ethical challenges, and it's difficult to control for the variety of confounders. Okay? So what's interesting about this trial, it was pragmatic, it was multi-center, it was cluster randomized, it was a phase 3 superiority trial. So arguably it's probably some of the best evidence we're going to get in a pre-hospital environment. Okay? Really, this is the number that stands out, 9.8%. This was the reduction in 30-day mortality associated with patients who received 2 units of AV plasma versus those who received standard care. Okay? It's almost unbelievable. Now, I mean, I've got to steal Lily's thunder here because he's going to then try and talk about the combat trial, which was another trial that went on in Dallas. So, single-centered in a large urban center with incredibly short transport times, 13 minutes to a level 1 trauma center that had access to massive transfusion as well as certification. So, trying to compare these two, very challenging. PAMPER, you're looking at aeromedical evacuations with a scene time of nearly 40 minutes. So if we're to learn anything, maybe there's no role for pre-hospital blood in the acute urban environment, but from a pre-hospital EMS environment, absolutely.
1 minute.
Okay, well, sum this up. I mean, conclusion right now, the findings of the PAMPER trial, they're pretty convincing, and at this point they do warrant the consideration for a change in practice. Okay? The potential rationale and some of the challenges that we face were the logistics associated with thawing, the short shelf life, could be mitigated by the use of never frozen liquid plasma or freeze-dried plasma, all of which are currently under investigation and we're looking for approval via Health Canada. So really at this point, thank you very much. And we'll hand it over, and I'll just leave this picture up here because I truly hope that only is going to be more engaging.
All right, thank you, Adam. I'd like to ask Oli to come up. And before we start, you can see things are getting a little heated, so we've got 2 large men debating up here. So we put 2 larger men in the audience. So George Papadopoulos and Rob Schlamp are the bouncers for this debate, so if things get out of control, rest assured you're safe. All right, Oli, take it from there.
Yeah, well, I can see things like the gloves are off now, they're getting a little bit dirty, but that's okay. I feel a little bit, I didn't bring any sort of multimedia or PowerPoint presentation with me, and if I had, I would have brought up some Nordic skiing or alpine event stats comparing Norway to Ireland. I'm just not familiar with this strange sport rugby speaks of. You are probably most in the room. But I was really nervous about this initially, to come up here and speak in front of all you experts, and then I reflected that, well, Adam and I have been debating and arguing for years and years, and it first started when he was my student, and I was teaching him about this job, and he started questioning me right off the bat, and I thought, oh boy, where's this guy coming from? But I seemed to like it and enjoy it, and that carried on through the rest of our career for a couple of years as we ended up working together, working through many of these calls as well. But as Adam correctly pointed out, many of the sort of foundational principles of resuscitation of hypovolemic trauma patients is based around balanced administration of blood products, permissive hypotension in certain cases, and hemostatic control. This has been borne out in lots of great evidence and research in the hospital setting, and much of this is also transferred into the pre-hospital setting, where we actually have had some really good evidence to support its use. We can see this, for example, in many in the room, we're rolling out with packed red blood cells on our helicopters. This is starting to become a standard of care around the country and around the world. Unfortunately, I don't think that evidence is there for plasma right now, so I'm going to convince you why we should not be rolling out plasma in the pre-hospital setting. So up until this point, there's been much of sort of physiological generalizability on why we should be administering plasma in the pre-hospital setting. There's been a few observational studies that have come out as well that maybe suggest that plasma has a role in the pre-hospital setting, but there really hasn't been a lot of great randomized controlled trials and evidence out there to support its use. Until recently, there were two, we'll call them sort of sentinel trials, and Adam's touched on them, but I want to unpack them a little bit for you. And I want to start with combat. And as Adam mentioned, this was a ground-based EMS service where 2 units of AB plasma were rolled out in the treatment arm of this randomized controlled trial. And the trial was stopped because it showed no benefit whatsoever. And the results suggested that rolling plasma out in this setting, there was no difference in outcomes to patients. So the next one, and this is one we hear a lot about, is PAMPER. Now, PAMPER is another randomized controlled trial. It showed remarkable results and improvements in patient outcomes. As Adam pointed out, 9.8, almost 10% reduction in 30-day mortality. That's a huge number. And this was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Many people much smarter than I am clinically reviewed it. But 10% suggests something along the lines of a public health intervention like penicillin or clean water. The question remains, is that number reproducible? And if this trial is replicated, is that the true benefit associated with administering plasma? And much of the questions when we unpack PAMPER are based around the potential for many compounding variables that have come into that trial. For example, the standard of care arm in that trial, it was rolled out through many different EMS HEMS services, and the standard of care was a real mixed bag of almost 50% of the standard of care involved basically cold normal saline for resuscitation, and another 50% in the standard of care was actually packed red blood cells. Now in the treatment arm, there were also, and with the rollout of this trial, it was rolled out in many different settings, including interfacility transfers and including scene responses. So we had a difference potentially in the treatment that those patients were receiving in the pre-hospital scene setting, and as well as in the sending facilities. For example, there could have been ATLS interventions, chest tubes placed, already blood products on board with that patient in that resuscitation. So there were lots of variables in there to consider. Now the trial attempted to control for these with multivariate analysis that I can't really break down at my level, but I guess we just have to trust that all of those variables were controlled for. Now, does this trial stand up to that type of critique? Many out there are suggesting that it might not, if we were to look at this a little bit more deeply, and maybe to justify PAMPER in itself, we're going to have to try and replicate this trial to see if that 10% reduction in mortality actually stands up. So this brings me to the crux, and the point of my argument is, if we're going to roll out a new intervention in the pre-hospital setting, it needs to be based on sound clinical evidence to support our practice. And if we don't base this on lots of good peer-reviewed randomized controlled trials that are easily replicated, we're taking a very scarce resource out of an environment where we know that it actually does benefit, and we're taking it into an environment where we're really not sure where it does, if it does any good at all. And I think this is the risk we have to consider if we're to move forward with rolling out plasma in the pre-hospital setting. I think as we talked about the other day, Orange came up with a number, $1.5 million to roll their blood products out. Think about what $1.5 million, or think about the cost of rolling out plasma and the logistical considerations that come along with it. think of the benefits that money, that resource from a cost effectiveness perspective could do, and things we know in pre-hospital settings actually do work, like buying more tourniquets, or, pardon me, 10 couple seconds? Training up another crew staff member we have. So I just don't know if we're at that point where we can justify, from a cost effectiveness perspective, from the use of a very scarce resource, or do we have the evidence to truly support moving forward with this treatment?
Thank you, Oli.
So thank you very much, Oli, and I reiterate your sentiments. I did actually learn a lot from you. I very much learned how to do this job, and I very much learned how to temper some of my enthusiasm and actually become far more effective in the job. So with regards to some of Oli's points here, talking about the combat trial, so some of the things that were identified that possibly played a role as to why success was not found would have been the thawing procedures. This was a system where frozen plasma, once identified, once the patient was identified, they opened up the cooler, and whether they had 2 units of frozen plasma or 2 units of dummy solution, which was frozen normal saline, they then embarked on quite a significant thawing procedure, taking anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And arguably, it's not the thawing procedure, it's the fact that they were taken away from other patient care that could have affected mortality in these people. So perhaps it's the actual solution that was used rather than the biological plausibility of the device. Next, as sort of I highlighted already, which was the short transport times. It's argued that would anything outside of rapid transport and tourniquets truly save people's lives in the setting of 13 minutes versus 45 minutes, which was seen in Hamper. So there's probably some argument to be made there, but I think overall there's very little in a short transport time. With regards to Hamper, I think as you already alluded to, the survival benefit, it persisted once PRVCs were accounted for. Okay, so although 9.8% didn't stand up, the survival benefit was still significant. Okay, where else are we here? I can't read my script. You commented that it's difficult to move forward with programs like this without robust evidence. As I've alluded, in the pre-hospital setting, we may never find better evidence than what we have now, just because of how challenging it is to try and undertake research in this environment. And that hasn't prevented other services and other systems from utilizing this and acting and actually creating these programs. So there's certainly, while there's some naysayers in the crowd for sure, there's certainly a group out there that believes in the evidence as it currently exists and is moving forward with these programs. Lastly, I think I'd sum this up by going back to the tenets of damage control resuscitation, which talk about and suggest that early blood product resuscitation leads to a decrease in overall units and a decrease in some of the other long-term things. Everybody okay? So perhaps we need to consider earlier resuscitation in the pre-hospital phase instead of waiting until you come to the hospital.
Thank you, sir. I just want to make a point here. Trust me, I have far more pictures of Adam sleeping in an aircraft. In fact, he's,
I've been saving this one.
yeah, I call it helicopter-induced narcolepsy with this guy. He's very tall with a long neck, kind of like a giraffe. Put a helmet on that, boom, he's at home. Then he's always complaining about why he's got a sore back, lifting all these watches and stuff. That's another story. So I thought about this, and I thought that this ultimately would probably boil down to a debate on pamper. And I think there is, and pampers, this is a discussion my wife and I have had for many years too. And I think although the trial is getting a lot of press, I think there still are a lot of questions out there to justify the results that this trial published. Now, that's not my role, I'm not an expert in that, But I just do want to highlight a few points that we have to move forward based on good quality evidence-based practice in the pre-hospital setting. There's not a lot of that out there. This is the start of it. And what I'm really excited about is in this room, I think that we've got the seeds of the next step, Hamper 2, or whatever that trial is going to look like, or whatever the next groundbreaking randomized controlled trial in pre-hospital HEMS-based resuscitation. And I think this is what this conference is about. Now, when we get that, and when we can look at that evidence and it's sound, then we can start making those cost-effectiveness discussions and move forward with this type of an intervention. And I just want to leave you with the notes that, or the thought that AB plasma is generously donated tissue by members of society, and we owe it to them to make sure that if we are taking it out of a setting where we know that it does work, that we can prove there's benefit to its use. I would love to be able to roll out everything under the sun in the helicopter, and Adam and I can just have as much fun as we want, but it's a very expensive platform, and we have to make sure we're moving forward for the right reasons. And part of that cost effectiveness analysis is looking at the benefit of an intervention like plasma, costing it out, and then asking ourselves, if we take that same amount of money, are we going to get more bang for our buck in another area? And I think that's where we're at right now, and that's why I say we are not ready at this point to move forward with plasma as part of a balanced resuscitation plan in the pre-hospital setting. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holy and Adam. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to vote for the pro plasma in the field. Adam Green, show of hands, please.
Okay.
28. And for Oli against plasma in the field. 31 to 28 in favor of Oli. The Vikings win this one.